What if I told you that the strangest night of my life didn't happen on some deserted highway or deep in the woods, but on a perfectly ordinary evening in the middle of rural America, under a sky so clear that you could see every star like a pinprick in the dark? You might think I'm exaggerating, or that this is just another campfire tale meant to spook children or impress strangers, but I promise you it isn't. What happened to me is something I still struggle to process even now, and the only reason I'm sharing it is because I know one day people will need to understand what I saw. It began on a road trip through the backroads of New Mexico, the kind of route most drivers avoid, winding two-lane stretches with no streetlights, endless desert, and the occasional gas station that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1950s. My wife and I had been driving for hours, the radio fading in and out, when the first strange thing happened: the silence. It wasn't the kind of silence you get when the radio cuts or when you're far from towns. It was total, suffocating, like someone had switched the world off. Even the crickets and the wind seemed to vanish. I remember looking at her and saying, "Do you hear that?" And she shook her head, eyes wide, already sensing something was wrong. Then the light came. At first, I thought it was a distant plane, a bright white glow hovering above the desert horizon. But planes move, planes blink, and this didn't. It was steady, sharp, and it pulsed like a living thing. My wife told me to keep driving, so I did, my hands locked on the steering wheel, but the light grew closer, brighter, until it felt like daylight in the middle of the night. I can't explain why, but instead of terror, I felt an overwhelming sense of being watched, studied, as if whoever controlled that light had chosen us. And then, as quickly as it appeared, it wasn't in the sky anymore. It was right in front of us, hovering maybe 50 feet off the ground, blocking the road like a gate we couldn't pass. I slammed the brakes, heart pounding, but the car didn't skid, didn't jerk. It just stopped, smoothly, like someone else had taken control. My wife grabbed my arm, whispering my name, but the words died in her throat because we both saw the same impossible thing: figures stepping out of the light. Not walking exactly, more like gliding, as if gravity didn't work the same way for them. There were three of them, tall, thin, their shapes hard to describe because the brightness distorted their edges, but I swear they weren't shadows or tricks of my eyes. They were real. I couldn't see faces, not then, just outlines, elongated heads, long limbs, and a movement that was too fluid to belong to any human. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't move. And then something even stranger happened. They raised their hands, slowly, like they were signaling peace, and in my head, not in my ears, in my head, I heard words. Not English exactly, but something I somehow understood: "Help us." I can't explain how or why, but I knew they weren't here to threaten us. They were fugitives, hiding from something even greater, and we had become the unlucky or maybe chosen ones to cross their path. That was the beginning, and nothing in my life would ever be the same after it. I remember my first instinct was to deny it, to tell myself I hadn't really heard anything, that my imagination was running wild under the pressure of the strange light and the impossible figures standing in front of me. But when I turned to my wife, I saw the look on her face, and I knew she had heard it too. The same words echoing inside her mind, the same plea that didn't belong to either of us. She whispered, "They're talking to us," though her lips trembled as if she could barely believe the sentence she was saying. And I wanted to reply, but before I could, the figures moved closer, their steps, or glides, or whatever it was, bringing them just a few feet from the hood of our car. The light around them dimmed enough that I could make out more details, though even now when I try to describe them it feels like my memory is playing tricks. They weren't grotesque monsters, nothing like the stories or movies show. Their skin seemed almost translucent, pale with a faint shimmer as though their bodies reflected the starlight above, and their eyes, if they were eyes, were large, dark pools that didn't blink, but carried something behind them that I can only describe as sadness. One of them raised its hand higher, fingers long and delicate, and once again the words came, not spoken, not heard, but simply placed inside my head like a thought I didn't create. "We are not safe. They will find us. You must help." My wife gripped my hand so tightly it hurt, and I realized that despite the terror coursing through me, there was something undeniably human about the way these beings looked at us, as though desperation transcended any barrier of species or world. I swallowed hard and asked, out loud, though my voice cracked, "Help you how?" The moment I said it, I regretted it, because the idea of getting involved in whatever this was felt insane, but the words had left me before I could stop them. The figures tilted their heads slightly, as though surprised, and then I saw something impossible. The light behind them shifted, folding inward, revealing a shape that hadn't been visible before. A craft, massive but silent, hovered just above the desert floor, its surface smooth and seamless like molten metal frozen in time, with no windows, no seams, no exhaust, nothing that suggested machinery. It was there 1 second and invisible the next, as if it had been cloaked and only revealed itself when they wanted me to see. I felt my entire understanding of the universe crack in that instant. "We cannot stay," the voice in my head continued, stronger now, more urgent. "Others hunt us. We escaped, but they follow. We need time. We need silence." I didn't know what they meant, but then my wife leaned forward, her fear giving way to something else: curiosity, empathy, maybe even compassion, and she said softly, "They're running." And the word echoed in me, because that's exactly what it felt like. Fugitives, not conquerors, not invaders, but beings on the run from something far worse. The air grew heavy then, a low hum vibrating in the ground beneath the car, and I realized their ship, or whatever it was, wasn't just sitting there. It was interacting with the earth itself, pulling or pushing energy in a way I couldn't comprehend. I asked the only question that made sense: why us? And their answer chilled me more than anything else that night. "Because you listen." In that moment, the silence I'd noticed earlier returned, deeper, thicker, almost painful in my ears, and I realized it wasn't natural at all. They had created it, blanketing the area in some kind of shield that cut us off from the world. No sound, no signal, nothing in or out. They were hiding here, and somehow, they had chosen us to be their witnesses, their cover, maybe even their allies. I wanted to say no, to tell them we were just two ordinary people on a road trip, not saviors, not heroes, not anyone who could stand between them and whatever hunted across the stars. But as their eyes fixed on mine, dark and endless and filled with something I could only describe as fear, I realized it was already too late. The desert night around us felt frozen, every star above sharp and merciless in the black sky. Yet I couldn't shake the sensation that something unseen was moving out there beyond the reach of the light, something drawing closer. The beings stood perfectly still, their gaze fixed on us, waiting, as though the next move depended entirely on what we chose to do. And I knew with a certainty that terrified me that our decision mattered. My wife whispered, barely audible, "We can't just leave them." And even though every rational part of me screamed that we had no idea what we were dealing with, I nodded. Maybe it was their eyes, or the soundless plea that pressed against my skull, but I couldn't turn away. "What do you need?" I asked, my voice shaking, and the answer came immediately, simple and impossible: time. Before I could question further, the hum beneath us intensified, a vibration that rattled the dashboard and made the air feel electric. And from the corner of my vision, I caught a streak across the sky, sharp and fast like a falling star, except it stopped, hovered, and then another appeared behind it. The beings' heads tilted upward in perfect unison, and though no words came, I understood their meaning as if they had shouted, "They are here." My wife gasped and clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin, because the streaks weren't stars at all but lights, 3 of them now, descending in silence toward the desert. They moved with a precision that was surgical, deliberate, and as they grew closer, I saw they weren't glowing spheres like the craft before, but darker, sharper shapes with edges that shimmered unnaturally, bending the air around them. The fugitives turned back toward their own vessel, and for the first time their calm presence fractured into urgency. "Stay," one of them pressed into my mind, and I felt an invisible force hold me in place. Not violent, but firm, as if they knew we would panic and try to run. Their ship pulsed once, a ripple of light spreading across its surface, and suddenly the very ground around us shifted, a mirage-like wave distorting the desert so that the road, the sand, the cacti all seemed to blur into one endless haze. It was as though reality itself had been bent, hiding us under a veil no human technology could explain. The hunter's craft descended lower, scanning the land with beams of pale blue light that swept across the terrain like searchlights. Yet each time the glow neared us, it passed right over, sliding past as though we weren't there. My chest tightened with every sweep, convinced they would see through the disguise, that they would pierce the veil and reveal us in an instant. But somehow it held. Inside my skull, the fugitives' voices murmured, layered together like chords. They seek us. They will not stop. We crossed to survive. And then one of them looked directly at me, its eyes locking onto mine with such intensity one felt my thoughts unravel. And in a rush I saw images that weren't mine. Vast cities of impossible towers under twin suns, skies filled with ships so numerous they looked like stars, then fire, destruction, and the dark shapes of the hunters tearing through it all. The vision slammed into me so hard I nearly cried out, but it was gone in an instant, leaving me breathless and shaking. My wife stared at me, pale, and I knew she had seen it too. The hunters' ships hung in the air now, methodical and patient, like predators sniffing for prey, and every instinct screamed at me that if their search lasted much longer they would sense the disruption, the silence blanket, the ripple that marked something unnatural. I turned back to the beings, desperate, and asked aloud, "What happens if they find you?" This time their answer wasn't words but a feeling, a wave of dread so deep it made my stomach twist, and within it a single phrase, "Then none are safe." My skin went cold as the meaning sank in. This wasn't just about them escaping an enemy. Whatever hunted them had power that stretched far beyond their world. If they were caught here, Earth would not remain untouched. The three dark ships hung above the desert like predators circling unseen prey, their pale beams sweeping back and forth, slicing across the landscape with inhuman precision, and every second they lingered I could feel the tension inside the fugitives rising, their calm composure cracking beneath the weight of pursuit. My wife's hand trembled in mine, and though I wanted to reassure her, I couldn't because the truth was I didn't believe we would get out of this untouched. Then, just when I thought the veil around us would collapse, one of the hunters' ships tilted, shifting position, and its beam cut dangerously close, grazing the distortion field that hit us. The fugitives reacted instantly, their forms glowing brighter as if straining to hold the illusion together, and in my head I felt the pressure of their fear. Not yet. Hold. My chest tightened with each heartbeat, and then, in an instant of pure clarity, I understood the unspoken truth. They weren't going to outrun the hunters forever. The silence field, the mirage, the energy that cloaked us, it was all a stall, a fragile bubble that could pop at any second. And when it did, the hunters would descend without mercy. I turned toward the beings, forcing my voice through the tightness in my throat, and said, "What do you need from us?" The answer came like a thunderclap inside my skull. "Witness." The word confused me, but before I could question it, the ground vibrated harder, the fugitive's vessel pulsing with a deep resonant hum that spread outward in waves, and for a fraction of a second, I thought the entire desert had shifted out of phase, like we had been torn from one reality and dropped into another. The hunter's beams faltered, flickered, and then two of the ships veered sharply away, chasing something I couldn't see, streaking across the horizon like arrows loosed from a bow. The third ship lingered, scanning, circling, unwilling to give up, and the fugitives gathered close to us, their dark eyes reflecting a sorrow that cut me deeper than fear ever could. In that silence, they showed me one final vision, themselves fleeing through stars, hunted endlessly, carrying the memory of worlds already consumed, and finally reaching Earth not as conquerors, but as refugees with nowhere else to go. And then I understood. Their plea wasn't for rescue. It was for remembrance. If they failed, if they were caught, Someone needed to know, someone needed to carry the truth. The last ship made one final pass, its beams slicing the veil so close that the dashboard glowed blue, and then, as if called by some silent command, it shot upward and vanished into the sky, leaving only the stillness of the desert night behind. The fugitives sagged as though the weight of their survival had crushed them, their glow dimming, and I felt their gratitude in a wave that filled my chest with warmth and grief. "You have listened," the voice whispered inside me, softer now, fading. "That is enough." Their vessel shimmered once, twice, and then it rose silently into the sky, growing smaller until it vanished among the stars, leaving no trace that it had ever been there. The silence lifted. The crickets returned. The wind rustled the desert brush. The world came alive again as though it had been paused and now resumed. My wife and I sat there for what felt like hours, unable to move, staring at the empty sky. When we finally drove on, neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. We had seen something we could never explain, and no one would believe us anyway. But I knew this. The fugitives weren't gone forever, and the hunters weren't either. Somewhere out there, above the stars we admire so casually, a chase continues, and Earth is not beyond its reach. That night didn't make me afraid of the universe. It made me aware that we are part of it, whether we like it or not. And when the day comes that the hunters turn their gaze here, the memory of those fugitives may be the only warning we'll have.